this year is a little bit different in the sense that people are actually paying attention to the Electoral College. I mean, during the last election, I don't think anybody sat down and was like, who's our electors? Nobody ever asked that question. And now people are sitting here wondering, how did these electors get elected? They're actually asking those questions, like, how did they get elected? How did they get chosen? Why is it we've never been as involved in this process as we were before? And so it's really, this election is a little bit different, I'd say.
Donald Trump doing very well across the middle of the country.
This is a Fox News election alert. Donald Trump is the president of the United States.
Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote and losing the election.
This is the second time in 16 years that the person coming into the White House has lost the popular vote.
At the age of 17, I went to my teacher and I asked, I want to be involved in politics. How do I be involved in politics? He told me one of the options is you become involved with the party. So it states the Electoral College will officially convene at noon in Olympia at the Washington State Capitol on Monday, December 19th. Secretary of State Kim Wyman cordially invites you to join her for a reception in your honor. So I had done my research and I found out about the primaries, which is where I was elected as an elector, was during the primary time. I just really wanted to jump in and do everything that I could as soon as possible. Of course, we do the Pledge of Allegiance and opening stuff, you know, the opening, all that fun stuff, and then we cast our ballots.
Are we parking in a separate area?
Park in the Washington State Capitol entrance. So the only thing that I feel between the people that I've decided on is which one I would put as the presidential candidate and which one I would put as the vice presidential candidate, because I feel they both do a good job. Yeah, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We know this is an unusual event. As I said, I've done these before for 5 different times, and this is the first time we've ever had these show up. So it's good to have you. I would just ask, if you want to take pictures, it's fine. Please do not stand in this section.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, we're going to be formal. I won't ask you all to say good morning back. Governor Inslee, distinguished members of the Electoral College, and honored guests, I'm delighted to welcome you to the beautiful state reception room at the state capitol for this grand occasion. Well, the Electoral College is really the way we elect the President of the United States. I think sometimes there's confusion. People think when they vote for president that they're directly electing the president. And by the Constitution, that's not the case. Today, we are here gathering the Electoral College as we mark the culmination of our voting for president and vice president. Most people, when they're looking at their ballot, don't realize the fine print says that you're voting for the electors to nominate whichever candidates you want. And what that means is all those votes are counted on election night, and we certify the election.
Okay, Amy Robeck, thanks very much. Another state is coming in right now. This one for Hillary Clinton is the state of Washington, 12 electoral votes. Last vote of Republican.
And when that happens, it determines which slate of electors gets to go forward to the Electoral College. So those electors are actually picked in their state conventions by the political parties. The idea is they were elected by their political party to represent them and vote on their behalf in the Electoral College. The vote here was 54-38 for Secretary Clinton. So that means 12 electors today, elected by their party peers at convention, will actually elect the President of the United States. So the concept of the Electoral College really has its roots in the Constitution. And this came out of a compromise that the framers made when they were writing the Constitution, because some people wanted the president to be elected by Congress. And then on the other side, you had people that just said, oh, let's just do a direct election, a popular vote election, up or down.
During the Revolutionary War, they had really negative experiences with mass politics or tyranny of the majority, right, where they thought that the publics were not well informed, and so the framers really wanted a representative democracy rather than a direct democracy. They wanted a political system where the public would have input, but the decisions that the government made ultimately would be distanced from the public.
In the Electoral College, each state gets electors equal to the number of U.S. senators and representatives. So each state would have the number of electoral votes based on the number of members of Congress. In Washington State's case, we have 12 votes, so that's our 10 congressional district members and then our 2 senators. It was designed by the founders to incentivize the smaller populated states to join and remain in the Union. The framers set up the Electoral College to ensure the minority was not overrun by the majority. It guarantees that smaller states are not overrun by the larger states. When you look in the modern era at the Electoral College, if we didn't have it and just had a straight popular vote, the election would be won and lost by the East and West Coast, because that's where the population centers are. What's the incentive for the middle part of the country to even be involved in a presidential race? It really empowers smaller states, and it incentivizes them to be part of the Union to this day.
It wasn't something that the framers of the Constitution agreed was the right thing to do. It was the thing that they had to do in order to get the constitutional proposal moving forward. The small states insisted on the Connecticut Compromise, which is essentially, they said, if the states don't have equal representation, then we're leaving, right? We're not going to be a part of this process. So there was this significant compromise, right, that essentially gave small states more power for just purely pragmatic reasons at the time. So if you're a citizen in Wyoming, your vote in the Electoral College is worth about 3.5 times the vote of a citizen from California, because every state is guaranteed 2 senators, right? And that translates where small states are overrepresented. Today, that's antithetical to our notions of democracy, right? A lot of people think that, the popular will should, determine what governments do.
It's much like the U.S. Senate balances and is a check against the House in our Congress. They were trying to give small states power in nominating the president, but they also built a very similar mechanism in the United States Senate. If you think about it, Washington State has 2 senators, so does California. So when our senators go and vote on a bill, they have the same power as a state that represents millions and millions of people more than we have in Washington. So I think if we're going to have the conversation about changing the Electoral College, you're probably going to have that same conversation about changing the makeup of the U.S. Senate. Today, electors are meeting at their state capitals across the country at high noon, just like we're doing, and it takes 270 electoral votes to elect our next president and vice president. Many people are tuning into the whole idea of the Electoral College this year, possibly for the first time. It's been a very long and interesting political cycle this year in Washington and across the country. So in 2016, when we convened the electors here in the Capitol, it was a very big day. We had a lot of people here, a lot of media here, and you could tell that there was a little bit of tension because there was a rumor that some of them were not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. There was a level of, I think, disbelief turned into frustration that like I said, their candidate won the popular vote but wasn't going to be elected, and they were just trying kind of any last-minute move they could to have people change their votes to try to elect someone other than Donald Trump.
As a Democratic elector, it is not an easy thing for me to pledge my vote to a qualified Republican alternative. But as an American, I know that it is the right thing to do.
At this point, it's about saving our country from being the most divided it's been since the Civil War. And we believe the only way to do that is with a Republican compromise candidate and unifying this country.
What do you say to people who voted for either Trump or Clinton and then the electors nominate someone else who we haven't voted for.
It's very clear in the Constitution that the popular vote is not what elects presidents. The popular vote elects electors, like us, and then we are the people who elect presidents.
Leading into the days of it, I kind of thought we could really have an outcome we've never seen before. All right. Now, in compliance with federal law, in front of you are the numbers of votes cast by the voters of the state of Washington. This certificate of ascertainment establishes that the Democratic Party candidates carried the state, and it is the Democratic Party's electors who should be present in the room today. So now the electors must select from amongst themselves a chairperson to lead the college in the conduct and certification of the balloting for the offices of President and Vice President of the United States. Are there any nominations from the floor?
I wouldn't just place the blame on the Electoral College. It's really important to recognize that when the framers of the Constitution were sort of thinking about designing this government and how this government was going to work, there were no political parties, right? They weren't thinking about, which party controlled the different states and that sort of thing. One of the reasons why the Electoral College is so problematic today is essentially it comes down to two political parties in each state, and that leads to the Electoral College process distorting essentially the popular vote.
There is this partisan divide that I haven't seen in my lifetime that we're seeing, across the country, particularly with the Democratic and Republican parties. As that divide happens, it becomes even more intense, and the stakes become even more intense of who wins president.
Well, welcome everyone. It's so good to have all of you here, and thank you for voting for me. And I just feel that it's an honor for each one of us to be here.
Another problem with the Electoral College is that states have decided that instead of apportioning their Electoral College votes on the basis of the percentage of support that each candidate receives, almost all states do it on a winner-take-all basis. So if you win 51% of the vote, you get 100% of the Electoral College votes for that state.
Under the Electoral College system, a candidate who wins the most votes gets all of that state's electoral votes. A candidate can win millions of individual votes in a state and still lose all that state's electoral votes because they lost the popular vote there.
And that's what we saw in the most recent election, where Hillary Clinton gets a greater percentage of the popular vote, but she ends up losing in the Electoral College quite substantially. Very early on, people saw that this was a problem. In about 1830, James Madison actually proposed a constitutional amendment to prevent states from using winner-take-all, right? And so this winner-take-all system can really distort the process.
I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a Lummi Indian. I'm the chair of the Native American Caucus Committee for the Washington State Democrats.
And one of the things that's really changed in terms of what the framers intended, and maybe appropriately so, is 29 states now bind the electors. They say you have to vote as the citizens of the state decided, based on winner-take-all.
And now I ask my fellow electors to take out the ballots for the office of the President of the United States. Please print your name and your choice for the President. Sign your name on the line below and we'll collect them.
The first time we had faithless electors, is what they call them, somebody that gets nominated by their party and then doesn't actually vote the way that the people voted when they voted for president, was in 1976. And the legislature, in response to that, came up with a penalty that if an elector did not cast a vote the way that the people of the state of Washington cast their ballots in the election, then they would be fined $1,000.
I promised those who elected me that I would do everything I could to ensure Trump did not become our president. To keep this promise, I believe I must cast my vote for an alternative Republican.
Okay, now I want you to read this right here, what the votes were.
All right, for the office of President of the United States, Colin Powell received 3 votes.
So we were in real uncharted territory. You kind of weigh again that idea of what the Electoral College is about, and that they have this power to vote their conscience if they want to in terms of the Constitution.
Hillary Clinton received 8 votes.
On the other hand, the statute was very clear that my office was supposed to levy a $1,000 fine for them not voting the way that the popular vote went in our state.
And Faith Spotted Eagle received 1 vote.
And so we waited out and we decided that our job in the Secretary of State's office was to enforce the law. We had a hearing and then ruled that they would have to pay the $1,000 fine, and 3 are appealing that ruling.
The certificate states, "We, the undersigned presidential electors of the state of Washington, having met pursuant to the provisions of federal and state law, do certify that we have voted by ballot separately for the offices of the President of the United States and Vice President of the United States for the respective terms, which begin on the 20th day of January 2017.
My name is Levi Guerin. I am the elector from the 4th Congressional District. For the first time in a long time, we have people sitting down and paying attention to the Electoral College, questioning the process and going out and learning. Do not forget this. Continue learning. Continue going out and educating yourself on our policies and how the Electoral College is run, and go out and learn more about how every part of our government is run.
I don't think there's any silver bullet in terms of the best way to choose a president, but we can think seriously about sort of the limitations of the process that we have. There's a lot more information about candidates today than there was in the past. I don't know, right? But maybe the need for the Electoral College isn't as great as it used to be.
I think that this is the debate about the merits of the Electoral College, I think, was only fueled in 2016 and will continue in the years to come. And I still believe that it works, and it works exactly the way the framers intended it to. I think there are a lot of people that don't like it. The frustration that we saw at the end of 2016 and the resist movement and all of those things, and that's not going to go away. But at a fundamental level, I still believe that the cornerstones of democracy, which the Electoral College is one of them, I think is what really makes our democracy strong, and I think is really a good thing for the United States, even though it frustrates a lot of people.